The disaster movie road was always going to lead back to Roland Emmerich sooner or later. Today we discuss The Day After Tomorrow, a movie where young Jake Gyllenhaal is chased down a hall by the ghost of Mr. Freeze. Actually, now I want that. Give me that movie. Welcome everyone to the Collector's Cut. I am Peter, and joining me as always is David.
If there's a bigger nerd in here, please point him out.
This is a movie podcast. We are working through a disaster movie season, and for some reason it took us this long. This is like our 5th disaster movie season, and we hadn't really touched on Roland Emmerich's oeuvre yet, but here we are today. Yeah. And I think it's because technically, well, there's disastery stuff in some of his previous movies. This is the first one that's just a disaster movie, because the other one, it's like his 98 Godzilla, Independence Day is, aliens, it's sci-fi. This is just a disaster movie. This is what it is through and through.
Yeah, I mean, there's also a lot of overlap with, obviously, Atomic Cinema Experiment. Like, picking up the sci-fi on that makes it that it can't show up here. But also, like, except for 90s disaster season, which I feel like there are much better examples of, like you said, it's not disaster first. I would not put Godzilla or Independence Day there. So really, there is nothing that would have fit into a previous category.
For disaster movies, yeah.
Yeah.
So, it's funny though, because I feel like Roland Emmerich's reputation is that he's the disaster movie guy, and he's definitely done other ones since, because he obviously did. He goes now to do 2012. Moonfall technically counts, although it's so outrageously sci-fi, it was done on Ace because it's very science fiction. Honestly, even that feels like an insult to science fiction as a concept. It's just such nonsense that you have to say it's make-believe in every way. It's
at the point of science fantasy. Yeah. It's like, look, this isn't going to happen. Let's not pretend.
I mean, but hey, yeah, so anyway, we're buried the lead. We're here today to talk about The Day After Tomorrow from 2004. I remember seeing this in theaters. I would have been 15, probably just turned 15 if this came out in the summer. So, yep, we're going to talk about it. We'll start spoiler-free as we always do. We'll give you a warning before we get into the spoilers. And of course, if you're enjoying the show on the YouTubes, please do hit the like button. Helps out a bunch if you can. Give us 5 stars on your podcast out. And if you want to support the show, you can do that and get bonus content over at patreon.com/MailFuzzTV or via YouTube membership. But I'll tell you more about all that at the end of the episode. Do you know what I've realised about this season of disaster movies? Actually, is not counting Meteor, because Meteor is obviously very separate to this, but I've realised that this is very much this string of movies from Deep Impact, Armageddon, The Core, Day After Tomorrow. I'm like, oh, these are the ones that I actually saw all of as they were coming out when I was growing up. Whereas, I mean, that's true for some of the ones we've done in previous seasons, like Volcano and stuff, but like, this feels very sequential almost. Like, I don't even mean this necessarily, but it feels very sequential to the point where I'm like, yeah, this has kind of charted my like age 9 through 15 over the last 4 episodes in a really weird way. But yes, had you seen The Day After Tomorrow before?
Yeah, I'm sure I've seen it like at least twice. It's never been something that I was about to say it's never been something I sat down to watch. It's always been something I caught. This is something that definitely was on like TNT or whatever with a bunch of ads spliced throughout to make it like a 4-hour runtime. But I think I might have sat down to watch this at least once, just beginning to end. And it goes to show you me saying that, how much a lot of it really stuck in my head after the fact of like, yeah, I think I watched it, maybe.
Yeah. So I mean, it's got some names in it. I mean, some weren't big yet. I mean, obviously we've got Jake Gyllenhaal in here, playing a teenager, and that was kind of blowing my mind a little bit, because I was thinking about the fact that this is only 3 years before Zodiac, and how it's funny. I guess this happens with a lot of actors because you keep playing teenagers in your 20s, but how you suddenly go from playing teenagers to, oh, you're a 30-year-old with like a proper job, which is kind of what he is just a few years later.
It's literally for female quote-unquote actresses, it's the porn schedule. You're either a teen or you're a MILF. There is no in-between.
That is the crudest possible way you could have put that, but
absolutely.
I see the point you're making. So yeah, you got him though. You got Dennis Quaid, and there's his father. We also have Ian Holm in a small role. Emmy Rossum's in here, who I mean, this is really the only thing I know her from, bizarrely. I know people know her from Shameless. The US version of Shameless is a big thing, and I believe she's married, I think, to Sam Esmail, who I'm a fan of. But
I'm not sure about that. She was also the female lead in the Phantom of the Opera movie adaptation.
Never seen it, but I'll take your word for it. I'll take your word for it.
She's a fully trained opera singer, so
really? Okay.
She's got a whole career over on that side.
Fair enough. So, yeah, I actually looking back on it, like, because Dennis Quaid's not like a huge name. It's actually kind of funny that it's almost retroactively got a big star in it because Jake Gyllenhaal went on to be a fairly big name.
Yeah.
But obviously he'd done Donnie Darko by this point, and that was so some people knew who he was. But this is before he'd had like a string of big movies where he's working with David Fincher, he's working with that director. So yeah, it's just funny that it's kind of a hindsight thing with this. They had more of a I guess a lukewarm cast of actors relative to like some of the big star-studded names that are in some of these other disaster movies that we've talked about.
Which I think, comparatively to something like Independence Day, which had a lot of big names in it, I think that it is good for the sake of trying to build up. This movie has a lot more of an emotional core, I would say, than the other ones, or at least it tries to have that. And I think it does better if you're able to distance of like, that's not just Will Smith there. That is this guy who I may not know. And therefore I'm able to actually like put more emotion into the character rather than just recognizing the actor. Yeah.
And to be fair, this is probably more comparable cast-wise to like the core, which again is kind of like no one huge, like some people that you might know, but like no one who's like a megastar necessarily.
Yeah.
So
I was just talking Roland Emmerich in general.
Oh, sure. I was just thinking about the movies we've done recently. Whereas, Armageddon's got Bruce Willis, right? That's like your big star, right?
Absolutely.
And so on. And obviously the 70s ones we talked about in past seasons were all just full of big names who were just, slumming it in a disaster movie for, some pay. But, yeah, so the basic premise of this one is climate change. Climate change comes and it comes fast. And disasters abound.
I actually am like, okay, you know what? Good for the movie. It's got something it wants to say. It's like, yep, this is the thing that we're actually facing down. It's something with consequences. Let's go ahead and do it. And then it just decides to say, okay, but like, what are the actual things that's going to happen from it? Oh, that's boring. I'm going to do all this other stuff.
I don't know if I agree that it's got stuff that it wants to say. Now, don't get me wrong, there's definitely a couple of moments, especially towards the end, that feel very like, we're going to talk to the audience about this is a very real thing we're all facing, and we have to like treat our planet with care and not make these mistakes. And while those words are absolutely true, and if honest, if I'm being critical, they're given a little bit too like PSA style to feel like they belong in a movie. I think, though, that's not the genesis of this movie. I think the genesis of this movie, what's all the cool shit we can do with ice, snow, and storms, and then we'll just sort of like, this naturally fits into the climate change thing that we can build it around. But it's not like a work of like passion where, I want to talk to the world about the danger of this and make people change their minds. It's not that. No. It's not that at all.
No. It's look, nobody, going back to the Meteor movies, they never made the Meteor movie by thinking of like, what happens if a rogue asteroid were to come and get redirected towards the planet? No, they think about LA getting blown up first, and then they backtrack. They say, all right, how do we do that? Same thing here. They've got all these, like, we want to show these big damn effects. How do we justify it? And they're so varied. There are so many different types of effects that I feel like climate change is the only thing that could work because it can do anything.
Yeah, but here they get to just be like, well, anything weather related can happen because of this, so we'll just do anything we want with the weather, and that's pretty much it. I think the weird thing about watching this now, and I don't know if it's just because we are more like we're further down the path of talking about climate change, right? Maybe that's part of it. Part of it's maybe also just that we're older and we're a very different age than we were when this came out. But hearing them actually talk about it in this movie is a little cringy, and like, because they keep bringing up the phrase global warming, and they even have a character do that thing that, like, let's face it, people who try to deny it exists are like, well, there's still snow outside. What's this global warming about?
Walking into Congress holding a snowball saying, explain this, liberals.
And it's like, okay, I guess on the one hand, this is incredibly realistic, but then everything that Dennis Quaid, the scientist, says also sounds like complete nonsense. I don't believe it for a second, most of the stuff he's saying. So it's kind of like, okay, it's kind of hitting on things. But again, it's only kind of hitting on things because it's convenient to justify the things the movie wants to do, not because it's like the mission of the movie is kind of how I feel about it. So with all that said, I guess we'll get into some general feelings on the film, but we'll save obviously the main disaster things that happen for spoilers and some of the where we end up. But David, what did you think of The Day After Tomorrow?
So going into this, I remember it being dumb but fun. That's kind of where I was coming into it at. I remember it, like, obviously it's just Roland Emmerich throwing stuff at the wall, whatever he wants to do, but I like remember it being a decently fun time. And that's where I kind of go back to this idea that I think I only ever really watched it on like a movie channel that had ad breaks and like was really breaking up the action and the flow of things. Because sitting down and watching it all in one piece here, it feels really front loaded. It feels like all of the cool stuff is right there at the beginning. Like first, I'd say 45 minutes to an hour. And then the back half of the movie, like by definition, is how can we do as little as possible in order to still keep the audience entertained, but not actually do anything that visually grand. And I found myself getting really bored by the end of it. I don't think it evenly distributes its action well enough. And the points where there are action in the back half are really contrived. Oh, they're really dumb action scenes.
Yeah, I was going to dispute you a little bit, because while there's maybe not as much disastery stuff in the back half, they think of nonsensical ways to make sure we have some action sequences in that back half. I think that's fair
exactly. In terms of like effects, acting, stuff like that, like the more technical aspects of it, I like it. I don't think anyone really delivers a bad performance. I think the special effects are visibly dated, but not distractingly so. I still think they're pretty decent, all things considered, if you consider the time. Opposite of something like The Core, where I felt like that was distractingly bad effects on some of those. But no, overall, I think this is less fun than I remember it being, but there are still a lot of moments that like I got a chuckle out of just how dumb it was getting.
Yeah, I think on the effects, it does hold up better than I thought it would. Like, you can tell, you know, if you know what you look for in terms of like the weaknesses of the CG, especially of the time, you can kind of see it. There's only one shot that really, I think, there's a big sort of wide shot of like New York near the end of the movie, and some of the buildings way off in the distance were kind of shimmering, and that made me chuckle a little bit, because that's actually something that happens in video games. Like, aliasing happens, and you have to kind of combat that with various techniques. And I was like, oh, that's actually kind of showing some of its like CG edges in a way that I don't normally see in movies, because in movies it tends to just be, it looks kind of fake or rubbery. This was like a technical thing that was like, oh, it's actually struggling with all the detail that's on the image right now, and it's I'm getting like a video defect almost off in the distance. Yeah. But it holds up well enough, actually, for what it is, and like compared to some of these other movies we've done. It does feel, and admittedly it's the latest in the timeline of the ones we've done this season, but it does feel like the one that's held up the most effects wise. I don't think there's any like big stinker moments in this, the same way that even Armageddon had some of those stinky kind of like, oh, this moment looks rough by today's standards. And I think that makes sense, because I do feel like late 90s into early to mid 2000s was the biggest sort of like leaps being made in CG. It felt like there was like an arms race to have the best CG, and then it kind of like, you know, just kind of fizzled out at a certain point, and we just got complacent for most studios and movies. But
yeah,
so that stuff's fine. I mean, what can I say about it? Like, I don't feel that strongly about it one way or the other, I guess. Like, I'll say it's not constantly annoying like Armageddon is, so like give it points for that, I suppose. I think the music's decent. I think they got there's actually a main theme, which is something that most big movies like this don't get anymore. So I kind of appreciated that. But yeah, there's a lot of silly nonsense. There's a lot of like weird rules, and I won't spoil the context because it is pure spoiler territory. But I'll just say, whenever this movie comes up, I feel like the first thing that always comes to my mind is this is the movie that has characters running away as like Cold approaches them.
Yeah.
And that is just like absurdly stupid in so many ways. But
What comes to my mind as a visual is, I don't know if you're familiar with this. There's an underwater process that's, I think it's called like the brinacle or something like that. Are you familiar with this?
Don't think so.
It's this underwater thing. I don't know the exact process of it, but I think it's mostly salt water, but because salt water can get a lot colder than fresh water can, if there is just like a place where fresh water is leaking in just a tiny bit, it can be super chilled, and you get this like instant transformation of like this icicle of ice just reaching down.
Okay.
And as soon as it hits the ground, it like spreads out and just like affects everything on the ocean floor. And it's super interesting to watch. But like that's what this movie does. That's what I feel like they're going for here, but like an above water and air version of that, and it doesn't work as well.
It very much reeks of, we want there to be a visual that we can see them running from. So everything be damned, we're going to have a visual, even if it doesn't make any real sense.
You might as well just have little cold demons, just like with pitchforks, just here.
So yeah, I mean that's the thing that always comes to mind when I think of this movie. But it's a dumb disaster movie of a different time. And it's kind of in this weird overlap where the effects are good enough now to do some really big crazy stuff, but at the same time it feels very of its era. It feels very 2004 in just about every way possible. But I don't think, like, I don't recall anything in this that feels like it's aged badly from like a problematic element outside of the science. But I wouldn't say, that's a different type of problematic. Like more like, whereas Armageddon, I'm cringing at some of the sexism, or I'm cringing at, this, that, or that. I don't think there's anything in this that strikes me, like, poorly in that sense.
No, I think it's very spoilery, so I can't say it, but I think that the way that America is, again, in all Roland Emmerich films, America is, like, front and center right there. Hey, look at that. And the way that it represents other countries is a little bit iffy, but by the end of the movie, it is kind of taken care of, so I'm not that upset with it. It's
mostly just ignoring the other countries. Although, to be fair, Scotland does get name dropped very early on. So, I mean, hey, this is not the first disaster movie this season where both of us would definitely be dead in the events of the movie, right?
Absolutely. I moved farther north recently, so I'm super dead comparatively.
Yeah. There's a part of this movie where he draws a line in the map of the US and says, everyone above this line's already dead. And I'm like, well, I'm pretty sure David's above that line.
Yeah, no matter where I lived, I was above that line. Barely sometimes, but yeah.
So that gave me a chuckle. And so anyway, and I'm further north than you are, technically.
Oh, yeah. No,
so
you're absolutely dead.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. That's comforting to hear. So yeah, I mean, I guess the big thing I would say is that, like, I think the closest we get to main characters are Dennis Quaid's character and then his son Jake Gyllenhaal are both in their separate plots. They're because Dennis Quaid's the scientist who does research in Antarctica, and he does a lot of weather stuff, and he's triangulating ideas. He's talking about this ice age that happened thousands of years ago and how we might be coming up on it happening again. Not as quickly as, he doesn't think it's going to be as quick as what ends up happening, of course.
Yeah.
For action reasons. And I guess that's the other weird thing is here is that, like, over the past, like, years, especially the last, like, 5 or 10, I feel like we have kind of seen what climate change is doing to the planet. And it is, like, this, slow rollout of these things that are happening. But obviously this is a big action movie, so it's like, no, we have to do everything possible, and they're going to sneak up on us. It's like, within the span of the first 12 hours of stuff going down, we've got all sorts of crazy shit that's never happened in these locations happening. So
I will say that that's actually kind of a negative I wasn't even thinking about. Sense of time passing, because time is passing. There's one specific part where it's Jake Gyllenhaal's plot, and one of his friends is looking out the window in New York, and he's just like, man, it's been raining this hard for days. And I'm like, it's been 6 hours max. How long? This has not been days have passed. You have not shown me that, movie. This has been 1 day max.
Yeah, there's that. There's that. I think, those characters definitely feel like the focus, and I think that they have, like, enough to feel like they are the main characters. But it does suffer from that thing that a lot of disaster movies suffer from, where we're sort of cutting between so many characters, and they kind of go out of their way to give characters are little side plots that maybe don't need little side plots. For example, Jake Gyllenhaal's mother in the movie gets kind of her own little side plot, and it's just like a nothing thing that just goes for heartstrings like as much as it can, and it just feels, and the way it's also just dropped for like a third of the movie. It just also feels like, okay, you could have just cut this entire subplot out. There was no need for this. It's just padding.
No, it's the heartstrings. You're spot on. Where it's like, okay, hold on. We've got this family. We need to show what every member's doing. What do we do for the mom if she's a doctor? And the answer is sick children. And it's like, yep, all right, there you go. That's what we can do to make this hit farther home. She may as well have been rescuing orphan puppies at that point.
It's also, I guess it's maybe a little striking that she is the one that by far in the family doesn't really have the important stuff to do, even though she's got a job that would lend herself to like really getting in the mix of things. But yeah, I mean the main sort of plot of the movie is that Jake Gyllenhaal's character is going to a contest in New York, and that's why he's there, and that gets hit pretty hard. So it's all about him surviving. And having a bit more knowledge than everyone else does, because his dad's like said some stuff to him, you know, either before or the one little chance they get to talk.
Yeah.
So
I was gonna say this is exactly the same as all the other, like, oh, I was a bad dad, but now that the disaster's happening, I want to prove that I can help my son, sort of thing. Like that plot that keeps popping up.
Yeah. Yep, a lot of that. And I think him and his wife are estranged, but honestly, they barely do enough with it to really give us that sense. I don't even know if they are.
They are, because he gets a letter or something like that, and then she's like, yeah, I get report cards sent to my address too, so they're definitely not living together.
Yeah, but I wasn't sure if that's because they've split up, or it's just because because he's always like going to weird parts of the planet for months at a time, that he just has like a base in Washington, and like, I don't know. It was a little unclear to me, like just exactly what the status of the family was.
Yeah, regardless, the relationship is not good.
No. There's a little bit of will they won't they. Jake Gyllenhaal's got a crush on Emmy Rossum's character Laura. That's why he joined this decathlon team, and that's it. That's your characters pretty much.
That's it.
Everyone else is just kind of set dressing. They're just like, they're there to like ask some questions occasionally. They're there to be other characters to, feel the effects of the cold or have an extra conversation we need to hear at some point, but that's about it.
Yeah, I mean, it's also set dressing, but I just really want to draw attention to not Dick Cheney, whoever this actor is, whoever he's supposed to be. He's the vice president who's like, global warming, that's stupid. We got to think about the economy.
Yeah, the economy's just as fragile as the climate. Yeah, but the difference is that you can literally make up some numbers to help the economy. You cannot do anything about the climate if we screw it up. You dumb son of a bitch.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure the justification was like, this would cost us hundreds of billions of dollars to implement. And Quaid rightly quotes back like, well, there's not going to be any economy if you don't do it. So...
Yes, that's a very good point. Yes, what economy is there if 85% of the population are dead?
It was it might have been a webcomic, might have been like an actual thing in a newspaper, but it was a one panel thing of a bunch of people post-apocalyptic sitting around a campfire, and the one guy's like, yeah, we may have ended the world, but for one shining moment we had a lot of value for shareholders.
Oh yeah, I've seen that be spread around. It gets spread around every single time there's any story about the climate going to shit. I see that meme being posted. Yeah. And
it always stands true, because even though Dick Cheney's character has gone through an arc in this movie, no one else in the real world has.
Yeah. I mean, I think I kind of, in a weird way, I kind of like the back half in some ways for being quieter and being more about, here's some simple survival things we have to solve because now we're in this situation. I admit, like, it's not up to the standards where it could be like the great focus of the movie, like I would maybe want it to be. But I do think it touches on some ideas there that I like. That kind of thing where, okay, we're trapped here, we're trying to stay warm, but we need that, we need food, for example. So how are we going to get food? Let's try and solve that in some way. Like I kind of like them broaching on that kind of thing. Obviously, the problem is that the one big sort of thing they do ends up in the most ridiculous, nonsensical shit possible. But
I like the idea that you're talking about.
Yeah.
I think what I was looking for more is interpersonal conflict. Like everyone is just so much on the same page. Like, okay, we gotta live through this. So whatever we all agree to is what we'll do.
Yeah, I mean, the only interpersonal conflicts in this movie really is the vice president who doesn't want to believe any of this shit, and then obviously he's just proven wrong as the movie goes on, and then there's kind of a rival love interest, and it sets it up as like, oh, she might be interested in this pretty rich boy who lives in New York. Shit you not. Before anything bad even happens in this movie, he literally comes over and says, you should tell her how you feel. I'm rooting for you two crazy kids. And I'm like, oh, so this isn't a thing. So, I mean, don't get me wrong. I don't want the love triangle. It's the most tired trope that there is, and it's painful to sit through most of the times. But the idea, the one conflict, this idea of the two boys maybe fighting for her attention, and that maybe like getting in the way of some survival stuff later on, might have been something to do. But he's already like thrown in the towel and said, no, you belong with her. I'm a nice rich teenager.
Exactly. Like, and that's the sort of thing when we get to the back half, like I would have been fine with it if there were just going through the survival phases. But even there's one point where, without spoiling too much of it, like one group decides to defect from another part of the group. Like there's a big split up moment. And that's the most you get of like, there could have been something. There really could have been like a really big thing here. And it feels so understated. Yeah,
debates about what to do, and then it can be like a microcosm of someone backing up what they're saying with some science, and then others just not believing it. So that's kind of microcosm
just going
of the world
off the
at large.
Emotions or like what's gonna like work for them in the moment, anything like that. But it's not there. And that's why I literally rented this off YouTube to watch it. And YouTube has a little like attention from audience, like the chart about this. The moment the big middle of the movie action set piece happens, there's a noticeable drop off. Like people are not invested in the back half, and I get that.
It's actually wild to me that YouTube still put that there for like the movies you can buy and rent, because I feel like studios wouldn't want people to be able to see that data.
Oh, no. Well, they get the money already.
That's
You're renting
true.
it. It's like, oh, there you go. All right, watch whatever you want to watch.
Yeah, you got the money on it. Tell me, is the 1080p bitrate on YouTube is shit for when you rent something? Because it's terrible on actual YouTube videos.
It's not noticeably bad for me. I mean, the only rental option I was given was the Ultra HD edition, so it looks fine. Well,
that's 4K, great. So that's a different, like that will look better. But I'm saying like the trailer for like the Odyssey was out a few weeks ago, and it looked like garbage on YouTube. Like it's 1080p, but it looks like shit.
I'd have to sit and watch it and tell you if it looks notably different, but the movie streamed fine for me. I didn't have any sort of issues.
That's fair. So, I mean, yeah. What do I say about? I mean, I watched this in 4K too. To be fair, like I mean, obviously it was fine quality wise. It does have that like early 2000s look to it. There's definitely some desaturation going on at times to make everything feel colder. I guess like that's one of their cheap techniques.
Well, yes, but I do think that this is one of the ones where it makes sense. Like, this is something that's done from a style perspective for the movie rather than it just being a trend of the time.
Yeah, but it does also fit in to the trends of the time.
Absolutely.
It's fair to say. So, yeah, I mean, honestly, like, I think it's not a good movie. Like, I don't think I could say that. I think it's a passable bit of schlock that you can have on, and it's not annoying like Armageddon is, right?
Yeah.
It's it's perfectly, for the most part, inoffensive, except from a science perspective. And if you're someone who actually knows the science of any of this, you're probably going to hate it. So that's absolutely valid. Yeah, don't watch it if that's the case.
There are multiple trivia entries on IMDb of like Roland Emmerich trying to get NASA to comment on it, be like, how accurate were we? And NASA's like, you don't want us to do that. Don't ask us to do that.
Oh dear, that's funny. Also, I was thinking, once again, there's a wave at one point in this movie that comes in via the Statue of Liberty. Now, admittedly, I don't know if like the rules apply. It's not like an asteroid like made a tidal wave in this case, so it's not like there has to be a specific direction. But I was wondering if this direction made any sense given like where the Statue of Liberty is and like the waterfall.
Probably not, because I think that's the same thing we went through last time. Of the Statue of Liberty is inland, like it is on the side of Jersey. It's in between Manhattan and that, so but it would never get hit first.
Yeah, they love showing it get hit first by the water. Oh, yeah. They love it. They cannot get enough of it.
I'm wondering how many people go to New York, they go on to Long Island, and they like go to the far coast, the one facing the ocean, and look out and expect to see the Statue of Liberty because of these movies. Because I know I would. I absolutely would if it wasn't for the fact I knew it was in the actual bay itself.
Yeah, well, they got to do the landmarks. We got to see some Empire State Building stuff. Notably, unlike all these other disaster movies we've done, there's one set of buildings missing in this movie because this is the first one we've done set after or made after 9/11. So, and I think I remember that being a big conversation at the time, is like why we're doing a weather movie is because no one wants to see like buildings be like, getting hit with things and on fire. It's like, no, we'll do this because it's so far removed and no one can like mimic this in the real world, or either intentionally or unintentionally. So
yeah, I mean it's about the imagery. It's about making that sort of like, okay, you don't want to see like the smoke coming out and all that, which is why I think the one that does have the smoke is LA. Like at that point it's like, all right, we still want to have that scene, but it's going to be over on the other coast where we don't have to worry about it. And then New York just gets wet.
Okay. I think that's underselling it a bit.
But it's a mildly damp day.
Mildly damp day, all right. As far as anything else goes, before we get into spoilers, I don't know if I have a whole lot to add, really. I want to bring the passion, and I didn't have a terrible time. Like I feel like, though, I will say this. I was getting a little bit bored at times because obviously it's not that engaging because it's not exactly great writing or great characters per se. They're just kind of inoffensive and a bit bland. I will say my mild enjoyment of watching this, like part of that absolutely will be nostalgia. Part of that is me going, oh, I remember this now. Like, this is like sparking brain cell memories from like, seeing this as a teenager. I don't know or think that showing this to someone for the first time now would get that much, unless they've got a particular taste for dumb big movies like this. I don't think it's necessarily going to get a whole lot of reactions out of it. Like, there's better disaster movies to actually recommend to people, and then if you want to get into the dumb stuff and see if you like enjoy what is for what it is, then that's when you get to this sort of movie.
It honestly, if you look at Roland Emmerich's career, this feels like a more tamed, toned down version of like 2012. This feels like that's where he went bigger. It's where he just did all the insane stuff all the time. But in its broad strokes, there's a lot of similarities between the two. And I think that this one, it is like 90% nostalgia, I think, for most people, because once we move out of like millennials being like the primary driving force of like the market and all that sort of stuff, like I don't see this movie getting remembered for anything. I don't think there's anything in there that is going to be a thing of like, oh yeah, The Day After Tomorrow was the movie that had this in it. Like it's going to be swept away with everything else.
This is going to be to like the Zoomers and the Alphas, what, like, when we go back and do 70s disaster movies, obviously some of them are the bigger names that sort of stand the test of time, but then there's the ones that we'd never heard of, and like, like City on Fire or like Cyclone, like no one's remembering those movies, and I think this is going to kind of be that for our generation, is like no one else is going to remember. Only we will, because we were around when it came out and we remember it. I remember the posters being there. I remember seeing trailers. I remember it being a thing that summer, but that's why I remember it.
Yeah, I think that if you're going to remember this for anything, it's the poster. I think that poster of just the snow covering up like 90% of the Statue of Liberty, marketing on this was top tier. Good on.
Oh yeah. The ice, like, sort of like being at, like, going out like in a straight line, as if it's like frozen as the wind's been hitting it, and like all the water's like kind of going sideways. Like that's it's a simple, straightforward thing. And unlike certain other movies with the Statue of Liberty and the poster, it does not spoil the movie in this case.
Can't imagine there's any movie that would have such a big reveal hinging on the Statue of Liberty.
Oh, dear. So, yes. All right, we'll get spoilers then, so we can just talk about everything. So, spoilers for The Day After Tomorrow. You have been warned. We're about to get into it. So, I mean, I don't really want to go through an order per se, but I will say that the movie kind of starts off with Dennis Quaid and his two cronies doing some readings in Antarctica, and we have to start off with an action scene. So we get this big, like, the ice is breaking apart and someone almost falls to their death, and we're having to cling on to him. But Dennis Quaid has to jump over the gap to get his research because it's so important.
Look, for this movie, it's like the perfect start. It's telling you exactly like the kind of zaniness you're getting into, the kind of the way that God is specifically targeting them in all of Antarctica. It is cutting right through their camp. So be it. But like, I can imagine a more serious disaster movie, something that takes itself more seriously, just like some randos that we don't know are at a camp and they're looking over and they see this happening. It's not something where we have to have the tense music happen, but whatever.
Yeah, and that leads into him making his big speech and being ignored by the vice president, and we have delegates who are like, wait, things are getting colder. I thought we were talking about global warming. And it's like, which, to be fair, I think that's why we stopped using that phrase. I think at some point someone realized enough people are just going to like hear those words and then think that saying that things are getting colder is contradictory, when it's no. It all ties together. It's all part of one thing.
Yeah, it's the larger thing. I mean, literally, renting this video on YouTube, YouTube occasionally has the little notes underneath whenever it's a controversial subject. It says climate change on here. So obviously that's the one that we went with. But that's what made it all the weirder for me for this scene as he's giving his talk and he's debating with the vice president. We cut to outside and A, it's snowing like crazy, but B, the meeting was very clearly about like adopting the Kyoto Accords and all this stuff of like, we have to help the environment. And yet there's a bunch of people standing outside chanting stop global warming. And I'm like, that's what they're doing. What are you like? What are you protesting here?
Look, there's a lot more things to protest for in 2026. Back then, they had to, look for things to if you really wanted to protest,
Impeach George Bush, stop the Iraq War. That's kind of still the first thing. Yeah, we're out.
Oh, geez. So we see there's a little research base that ends up being Ian Holmes' little base with two other guys. Like they get some readings early on. There's not really a whole lot to it. It's just like a group of characters we can feel sad about later.
They're the Scotland people.
Well, they're not in Scotland. They're in England.
Oh, are they? There was definitely a cut to a location in Scotland. Which one was that?
Maybe their base was in Scotland. He was definitely watching a game on TV, like a football game on TV that was in Scotland, because they said that because they were playing Celtic. Manchester United were playing Celtic, and it was a Scottish commentator. But I don't know if that necessarily means that they were like sitting, because they were definitely all English, because they all toasted England before their deaths later on.
Yeah.
So I was like, good riddance.
Damn traitors.
So there's that, but I honestly don't have much to say about them. Right? They get some readings at one point. They look sad because they realize they're about to die, and that's kind of about it. There's not really a whole lot to say. They basically get to say we had Ian Holm in our movie. We had like a legendary actor from Alien in here. Yeah. So be happy about that. I
mean, in the context of the movie, their whole thing was they're running the data centers, but they don't have the manpower to like process it, and then they just email it all over to Dennis Quaid and then die. Like that's it.
Yeah. So you got them, and then Dennis Quaid, of course, he set up that he's got his teenage son who's going to New York, and he wants to come and pick him up to take him to the airport. He's actually late, but he catches him just as he's getting into a taxi cab. So he's like, oh, well, I'll pay the taxi driver. I'll take you so we can talk for like 5 minutes on the way to the airport.
And I know the shorthand here of just like, how do we show that Jake Gyllenhaal is really, really smart without actually doing anything? And apparently his entire basis for that is he flunked calculus because the teacher didn't like that he didn't show his work, but he didn't show his work because he's able to do all the math in his head.
Can I want to interject here, right? I don't know how maths is done in the US, right? But I'm going to tell you something about how maths worked when I was in high school. The teacher specifically stated, as soon as we were getting to that stage where we're going to start getting exams every year, right? Because you don't do that when you're super young. You start doing that maybe around, 13, 14, something like that. And he's like, so when you look at a question in the math exam, it'll say there's maybe 5 marks, 10 possible points for this question. Only 1 point of those 10 points is for the answer. The other 9 is showing that you know how to get to that answer by showing the working. So him sitting there like a petulant child saying, I did it all in my head. I'm like, yeah, but the test is to show that you know how to get to the answer. Just getting to the answer isn't showing you know how to achieve it, even if it's technically right.
Yeah, no, I hate this moment. A, because it's just lazy writing to begin with, but B, like, that idea, the idea of like, oh no, I did all the work in my head, so I just put it down on paper. And Dennis Quaid does not come back to him being like, well, was it in the directions? Were you told to show your work? There is a thing about going through proper procedure. And that kind of leads into the larger thing of this movie does the global warming, climate change, like listen to the scientists and not the politicians. But it seems to have this disdain for science. Like the actual going through and showing the work and doing the process, like, no, we just want the final result. Tell us what to do and we'll do it. But like, don't hem and haw with all this. Oh, how all these models that we set up don't work and all that. So screw it. We're just going to do something that works.
Yeah, instead he just gets a big smirk in his face. He's like, oh, that's my boy. That's my boy. He's a smart one. He's a smart one.
And then like throughout the rest of the movie, like what does that matter? Not at all, because all it comes down to is not knowledgeability. It's not his intelligence. It's his trust in his dad.
Yes. The fact that he is smart, other than the fact that I guess that makes him eligible for this competition he's in with the other kids, has no bearing on anything later on. Like everything he brings up that he knows is just because it's stuff his dad's told him at some point.
And even when we see like the competition, the contest he's in, it's more like bar trivia than actual like, oh, solve this equation or anything like that. Yeah. It's like, what was the emperor of the Mayan Empire? He's just like, okay, here it is. I know this because I read a book once.
I mean, it's really tough trivia. It's really deep cut stuff, but yeah, it's not, working things. I mean, maybe day 2 is that though. But we only saw round 1. Yeah. They implied there was going to be multiple days of this shit.
And that's where he would have flunked, because it's going to say, all right, well, if solve this equation, show your work. And he's like, I can't do it. I have no idea.
I'm a savant. I just see the numbers appear in my head like magic. That's all I do.
Oh, God.
Oh, dear. But obviously there's the leader of the hometown team looking around at Emmy Rossum and just Melinar. Before we get to that, though, there is obviously the stuff on the plane. And this is like the day before stuff gets bad and they ground all the flights. But there is a lot of turbulence and Jake Gyllenhaal's scared of flying. And they do the whole thing here where he gets scared and grabs her hand, and it's meant to be like a sweet moment, and she's like, hey, can I have my hand back afterwards? And it's, just whatever, it's fine.
Yeah, so it sounds like we're about to get into like the actual disaster scenes. Just to be clear as to what the explanation is, like they have the ice shelf crack, and that's the big opener. Well, some time passes.
Yeah, well, I was going to like once we kind of talked about the characters for a bit, I was going to like be like, okay, here's all of the, because there's a lot of little things all throughout the first half of the movie. Like the first one's like giant hailstorms in Japan, I think, is the first one.
Yeah. Well, I was just explaining their explanation for it, like how it would happen. So once the ice shelf cracks, he gives the talk, and during the talk, he basically says, there is an ocean current in the Atlantic that is responsible for keeping the North Hemisphere warm. And if that gets too much fresh water, a la from the glaciers, it can throw everything out of whack, and then all of the rest of the stuff just happens as a consequence. That's what it is.
Yes. I'm going to assume all of that is completely wrong.
Probably. I mean, it completely defeats the point of greenhouse gases, because the whole point of greenhouse gases is it keeps warmth in. But sure, it's the current. I mean, there's probably some attribution to that, but God only knows what.
I know the UK is warmer than it would be otherwise because of the Gulf Stream. Like, I know that is a thing, but like, I feel like whenever I hear about the ice melt, it's usually, rising sea levels that are the main problem, as opposed to, whatever else. You never
hear something happens in the Atlantic and then all of a sudden there's tornadoes in LA. Like, that doesn't really come across.
Oh, yes. I mean, that's probably the next big one to talk about. I'm sure there's another little one before then, but because they mention a lot of things happening around the world that we don't see. But the LA tornadoes are a big thing, where we cut to this guy in like a Hawaiian shirt, and he's got his girlfriend in his office and they're getting smoochy. But he actually works at the weather, like research building in LA, right? Like the main weather building. And his girlfriend even says to him as he's starting to kiss her, don't you have to keep an eye on the weather? And he's like, it's LA, what weather? And so they're smooching, but she hears a noise and the phone starts ringing and someone's like, hey, we're down at the beach. And we cut to the beach and like the weatherman's like under like the decking because there's so much wind at the beach that it's like dangerous to step outside.
Well, they got the baseball hail too.
Yeah. And he's like, hey, look at these numbers. And then it cuts to the other researchers at, where David Quaid is, and they're all looking at the monitors and they're going, oh my God, this is all terrible. But the guy looks out the window and we just see a tornado form above LA, and then there's multiple tornadoes, so we get an extended set piece of just tornadoes going through LA, ripping cars away, throwing them around. The weatherman's in his car dodging them. He's trying to report on them before he eventually gets hit by the road sign that just comes and hits him in the face.
Yeah, it's a brutal scene, and like it's eye-catching. We're half an hour into the movie, so they're keeping a good blister here, a good pace with all of this huge set-piece stuff. I know they don't keep it up, so seeing this here now, I'm like, okay, we couldn't have put any of this later in the movie at any point.
See, I don't know if I share the same problem as you do, though. I think my problem with this, though, is just how random it is.
That too.
Versus, like, the main thing that's going to happen in New York later in the north part of the planet. Like, this stuff just kind of feels, we want an action scene at the 30-minute mark, so we're going to do tornadoes in LA.
It felt like that, and also, obviously, this movie was made with Hollywood. So it's like, okay, yeah, we're going after New York for most of the movie, but, like, when we're showing it at the premiere, it's going to be in LA, so let's let the audience cheer when they see this building get destroyed or that street get messed up.
Or the Hollywood sign being destroyed by
getting
the
erased off the sign, yep.
So that's obviously one of the big money shots. The big ending to this section is that the guy we started with, like, he's in the room with his girlfriend and they're both looking scared, looking out the window. And then it cuts to the janitor who's got headphones on and he's further in and he turns around and he notices finally that something's going on and he goes over and opens the door to the room they were in and it's just like gone. Like the side of the building's just been ripped away by the tornado. And it's like, okay.
Yep.
All right.
Yep. And like interstitially here, we keep on cutting back to Washington where, you know, they're getting reports of what's happening and how they're responding and all that stuff. And it basically is like, whoever the president is, he's dickless, and Dick Cheney's the running the show. He's like, oh, this is what we should do, Mr. President. And he's like, all right, let's do that.
You're slowing down Dickless and Dick a lot in the last like 10 seconds. My brain's trying to keep up with all that. Yeah. All the stuff with Quaid, trying to convince him and him being shot down, like that stuff's the more boring stuff to me, where I'm like, I feel like I see this in every disaster movie, and I'm just gonna like let's get to the point already, you know? Like I'm ready to move on. They do introduce like a lady from NASA, who like joins Quaid's team as they're researching stuff because now they believe stuff's going on. I did get a little chuckle here out of like the younger guy in the team kind of like just going over to introduce himself, and then like the sort of the older guy just slapped him in the back of the head. I'm like, now's not a time for flirting. What are you doing? Really, right now? And it becomes almost because later on in the movie when they go off on their big journey to try and save Jake Gyllenhaal, they're driving away from her and the young guy just sticks his head out the window like a dog to look back at her, and I'm like, it almost feels weird that they didn't share, like, not even like, I don't mean a kiss because that'd be too much, right? They've not developed their relationship enough, but I almost felt it was weird that she didn't at least like sort of go over and say good luck or something. There's just a little thing to show that she's noticed the attention, but like no, she's ignorant to it.
It would also for an audience reinforce the idea of we want him to be able to get back to get this relationship going and make this thing work out, because as it stands, name the character. Give me a name. He's no one. He doesn't matter.
I think he's JD.
All right, I'll take your word for it. I have no idea.
Oh, that may be the other teenager, the one that's like might be a rival. That may be JD actually.
You're way off then.
Well, all their photos are like all 40-year-olds on IMDb. It's kind of hard to tell. Nah,
I can tell the difference between Jake Gyllenhaal and Dennis Quaid barely, but it's there.
Okay, I know who those two are though. That's different. So that's also going on, and then like I said, there's more disasters around that get mentioned. But the big stuff is building up to New York, and there's a whole running sequence of events of like, okay, it's raining really heavy. We're kind of like told that all the planes are grounded, so I guess we're not going home anytime soon. The event's been cancelled. We're all sort of staying at this dormitory in this like fancy like high school in New York, and then, you know, it's like, hey, because we can't all stay here permanently, we're like, they're trying to pair all of the students that have come to visit the city to go and stay with the students who live here, and the rival character's like, hey, you three can come stay with me, and Jake Gyllenhaal's like, that's great. I'm so happy we're going to be around you for longer.
And then Jake Gyllenhaal gets slapped in the back of the head. This is not the time for that.
So they go and stay at his fancy penthouse, and he's got a doorman and all the rest of it. And while they're there, they see in the news, all the trains have been cancelled because of flooding. Like, there's no trains out in New York anymore. What are we going to do? And it's when they're actually outside on foot trying to just get somewhere that the water starts to come into the city. I mean, it's already like up to their knees or past that, but like it's coming in. It's not a tidal wave. It's more like just a big wave.
It's a rogue wave, but that's also this entire sequence is kind of the weird part to me, because with the tornadoes, those just spring up. Like, you got cold and hot air mixing. That's how tornadoes happen. Super quick, super easy. It just happens. Same thing with the super cold chill. We skipped over a sequence where some helicopters that I believe are carrying the royal family.
Oh, that's in Scotland. That's the part you're thinking of that's in Scotland.
There you go. They just drop out of the sky because the gasoline in them froze, which only happens at like negative 150 or something like that. All that stuff makes sense from what the movie has presented to us. This wave feels like there's no explanation. Like, what happened to cause all of this displaced water to suddenly surge in?
The giant on-land hurricanes getting bigger and bigger, and it's like spinning the water around. I don't know.
All right. I mean, I get it's as good as explanation as any, because like, if it were just a thing, because we see that the streets are already flooded up to their waist. If it were just a thing of like, slowly over time they're getting frothed up, and like this entire place is going to drown. To
go back to the freezing thing on the helicopters, right? So that's in Scotland, and that's how they introduced this idea of the temperature getting so cold that things just instantly freeze. And they also tease it, like the teenagers, before they go back to that guy's place, they go to the museum, and there's like a mammoth who he was found in the ice, and he was frozen so suddenly that even his stomach's contents were still in there when they found him, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, okay, well, we're setting up again a second ice age here.
Yep.
So the thing they explain is that the thing that's over Scotland, and then there's a second one that appears over Canada, and then a third one that appears over Siberia. It's these three giant hurricane-like cyclones, but they're on land, and they're going to keep getting bigger, and when they're over, we're going to be in a new ice age where the top half of the planet is just uninhabitable, right? But they say that while the storms are going, though, the eye of those storms is where this super instant deep freeze, like minus 150 Fahrenheit temperature is going to be. So that's mainly setting up a big thing in the back half of the movie where New York's already flooded and cold, but there's going to be this like eye of the storm, like period of a few hours where it's so cold that it's going to be almost impossible to survive.
And let's also not overlook the absolutely critical scene where some guard goes into the zoo and says, "Oh, hey, all the wolves got out."
Do you know what? I remember them because of how stupid that part is later on, but I didn't remember them setting it up. I thought they just showed up out of nowhere. I did not remember there being like, the zoo in Central Park's got some wolves that break out as a setup for it.
I would have rathered they just came out of nowhere, because then you could just have a throwaway line. You could just have them say like, "Oh, they must have gotten out of the zoo or something. They're built for this environment." But no, we have a whole thing of showing like the door being ripped open Godzilla style of like, "Oh no, they've escaped. The wolves are loose in Manhattan."
Well, I think the implication was the weather did that, not the...
Yeah, I know. It's torn apart by that. It just looks like it's a creature flick now of like, my God, the wolves.
So, anyway, the wave comes in, like, and they do a couple things here, at least, to try and make you like some of the main characters. Mainly, Laura, she gets stuck for a little second, gets a cut on her leg, which is an important plot detail for later, but we'll come back to that. She turns to help. There's a woman stuck in a car, and she only speaks French, and the policeman trying to help her can't speak that. But Laura, being a brainy teenager, she knows French, so she goes over and helps and passes some instructions over, blah, blah, blah. And she's doing that, so it's okay. She's a nice person. She's trying to help someone, and she's been nice enough to Gyllenhaal. It's not like she's been like the standoff, cold type or anything. She's been perfectly pleasant. But this is like her doing something and inherently good. And then Jake Gyllenhaal chooses to run back and like save her because he sees the wave coming in. So we get like a wave, running against the nick of time, like it's almost at them. They just get into the library when all the windows come smashing in and they get upstairs. So he saves her. She was helping a stranger. Okay, they're both good people, right? We've established that so that we don't think they're assholes for the rest of the movie. That's nice. We
don't assume Jake Gyllenhaal's only motivation is getting laid. Like he actually is a decent person here.
Yes, he actually cares about her beyond just the hormones of the situation. Yes. So that's all very well, right? So and it's not like the greatest examples of this ever, but it's the basics. They're at least doing some of the basics to make you care about the characters. So that's fair enough.
Yep.
But that sets up this new status quo where they're in the library, it's going to be really cold, and very quickly the idea of like burning books to stay warm is going to be a big part of this.
The first thing, the burning books comes after the split happens, but there's like probably a good like 100 people, close to 100 people who have all holed up in this library.
Is that after the split? Okay, well, I mean,
yeah.
I mean, either way, I mean, they're all separate issues to talk about, but the book thing, there's like one guy who, like a librarian, like, there's a running thing with him, like being kind of appalled that they're burning books, and he gives into it, but he does kind of protect this one Bible that he's like, this is the first book ever published, and I will not let it, like, you know, like this is going to remain, civilization will persist, and this will be the one element that proves that the written word was the greatest thing we ever did, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, all right. There's a nice little joke though, where when they're first starting to burn books, and like they're maybe being a little selective because, you know, like let's not burn the important stuff.
Let's not go to the rare book section first.
But the friend, like the third of the trio, right, the one who doesn't really have as much to do, he says, "Oh, there's a whole section down here about tax law. Let's burn these first." Yeah. I thought that was kind of funny. Look,
if there's anything that's going to be completely useless after all this is said and done, it's going to be tax law. There's no way that's going to matter. I do, like, again, this comes into that tiny little thing. The movie doesn't make a big deal out of it, and I don't think it is. But if you really stop to think, he says, like, if all of Western civilization's going to be gone, like, I'm going to protect this little bit. We, as the audience, know the Southern Hemisphere is pretty much fine. Like, there is still civilization. It's just not the Northern Hemisphere.
And I get that this maybe, you know, it's the big library in New York. I suppose it probably does have some important, like, first editions and things like that. But most of the books here, there are definitely copies in other parts of the world that are fine. Right. Like, you're not, like, losing... Like, I get, like, obviously, burning books is a thing that comes up when you're talking about really horrible things and fascism and all that. But in this context, we're not censoring anything. We're burning paper to stay alive. And these books, these ideas still exist elsewhere. We're okay, right? Yeah. The argument doesn't hold much weight.
The only thing I'll give it is that, theoretically, the people in the scene don't know if this is a worldwide event. They don't know that the Southern Hemisphere is fine. They might think this is going to be the last bastion. We have to do what we can. Yeah.
I mean, and obviously one of the first things that happen as well is that Jake Gyllenhaal tries to go find a phone, and he has a logic. Now, I don't know if this is entirely true, but he says the payphones would be getting all their power from the phone line itself. I know that home phones do kind of operate like that, where if your power goes out, your home landline will still work because it gets power from the phone line. So that does at least make some logical sense to me, even if it isn't entirely true. I get where the idea comes from.
The flaw in his idea is finding a non-vandalized phone in New York City. Even during that time period, I don't think it was possible.
But he finds one, and it's downstairs, so the water's coming in, so he's only got a limited time to talk to his dad. But his dad says, "Oh, don't move. It's going to get really bad. Stay in and stay warm. That's the only chance you've got." The whole go south thing is now irrelevant. So that sets up that idea, and that's why when some characters, once the water outside is frozen over, and this is maybe tying into that, like how much time has passed here, like that, I guess that's telling us to an extent, but it feels like no time's really evolved, but all of a sudden all the water outside is frozen. So people are walking on it, and that gives the cop who's kind of around and in charge, be like, hey, we should start moving while we still can, like while it's still possible to move south. And Jake Gyllenhaal's like, no, my dad does this fancy job, like
my dad works at Nintendo. He says no.
It's going to get really bad outside. If you go out there, you're going to freeze to death. And they all just sort of say, but obviously the people who know him agree to stay. The homeless guy who, again, there's a lot of like ancillary characters who are constantly in the movie, but I have very little to say about them. So there's a homeless guy with a dog, and he's always there, and he stays in the library with these characters, but I don't really have much to say about him other than that.
The people that Laura saved from the car, they stay with her. The couple librarians who work at the place, obviously they hold back, but we are down to like under a dozen people now.
And there's like I think there's a red-haired girl who's the one who keeps us like not arguing but debating with the librarian guy.
Yes, that's right. And it felt like if there were any character who had a cut scene or two, it's her, because she comes out of nowhere, and yet she actually has lines and a personality.
Yeah, was she maybe on like the other guy's team in the school thing, maybe, or something? I don't know.
Perhaps, but it wasn't. She wasn't in the his like dorm room when they were like talking about getting out of the city. So she must have met up later if that's the case. But I feel like it just came out of nowhere.
Yeah. Either way, she's around as well.
Yeah.
So
The only thing to add on is during the phone call with his dad does specifically say, "Stay put. I'm coming to get you. I will make my way there, and I will make sure that you are safe." And that's where we get the whole back end of the movie.
I'm coming to get you, Barbara. That's
Pretty
me,
much.
That's me combining Night of the Living Dead reference with Arnold for some reason. I don't know why, but yeah. Although he does like wait like a few hours because he wants to. He has to go and present to the president what's happening because they'll finally listen to him. And he's like, everything south of this line, like send them further south, evacuate them. Everything above that line, like they're on their own. It's too late for them. You didn't listen to me soon enough. They're already like their best chance is to try and stay warm and wait out this like 7 to 10 day storm that's happening.
Yeah, I do like Dick Cheney's line here, where he's basically like, "Oh, well, it's easy for him to say abandon the whole northern states. Like he's down here south with us." And then the other scientist guy's like, "His son's up there. Check yourself." And Dick Cheney just kind of like recoils into himself.
Fair point, I guess.
All right, maybe I'm a little bit heartless. Rackle, black.
Yeah. So I mean, other than like, okay, yeah, the mom like stays with the child with cancer to wait for an ambulance when there might be no hope anymore. But the firefighters show up and take them away. That's the end of that plot. There's nothing to add.
It's literally like, "Oh, you go home, other nurse. I'll stay here for as long as I can," and then the rest of the movie happens, and then there's one scene of a couple firefighters coming like, "Hey, we heard someone was here. We have an ambulance. You're safe now." And then she's gone for the rest of the movie.
Yeah, it's not even that late because there's a big gap between that and then when you see her at the refugee camp at the end. There's a big gap, so it happens like relatively early even. So the two main things we've set up then are Jake Gyllenhaal and his group in the libraries try to stay warm, and they go through a few things, burning the books. Eventually, the big conflict or the big crisis is that Laura, after she's had her heart-to-heart with him and kisses him because he's revealed his true feelings in front of the fireplace, she starts to get really sick. And it turns out her cut from when all this went down has got infected, and now they have to try and solve that.
I actually appreciate, obviously I think it was for the visual touch of it, but I appreciate the fact that they went through the effort to show that this standing water, the waist-high water from before, was caused, like it was waist high because all of the sewers were backed up. So this was literally sewer water that got into her cut and affected her here. It's a little thing, but I appreciate that they took the time to do it.
Yeah, I mean, I actually kind of like, I mean, we kind of glossed over just describing the events of that part, but I do love in a movie where they've physically flooded like a set to do a scene like that, and they're actually got to have actors like traipsing through like waist high water. I always like that. One day we'll have to do some sort of 90s action season where we get to do Hard Rain, because it's an entire movie set in a flooded town, and I love just the idea of that. Like, give it to me.
I thought the back end of that sentence was going to be, and they didn't flood a single thing and it looks like crap.
Oh no, they like that movie. They flooded everything. Right. That's all practical water, baby. Barring maybe one or two moments, I guess. But
James Cameron must have showed up on set every once in a while.
Nah, that was just the star power of Christian Slater and Morgan Freeman got them through it.
Ah, okay, gotcha. I didn't know Morgan Freeman did another disaster movie.
It's not a disaster movie. It's just an action movie. It just happens to be set in a flooded town.
Oh, okay, fair enough.
Yeah. So, anyway, that becomes their goal, and it just so happens one of the big scenes to show like the effects of everything, and this was just before the ice froze. A ship, like a stray ship, just kind of floats in to like New York, and like basically stops like near the library, but they see it go past the windows, and they're like, "Whoa, it's a ship."
I'm pulling up on a map how deep into New York the New York Public Library is, because like I have a feeling that there's no way it navigated past that many skyscrapers to end up right in front of them.
I guess the only thing I could maybe argue against it is that New York does have a very consistent grid-like layout. So if it happened to hit, because if you go to the north, like the vertical roads, if for lack of a better term, the ones that go south to north. They are pretty much just big straight lines. Now, I'm not saying that justifies it, but like, I can suspend my disbelief a little bit.
All right, to be fair, it is as inland as humanly possible on Long Island.
It's in the middle.
Smack dab in the middle of the island.
Okay, fair enough. But,
And also, to be clear, like, there is an entire section of New York on the other side of Long Island. Like it's in the middle of a bay. This is not something where it's like, oh, there's ocean right over there. It's very inland.
Yeah. Look, I'm not trying to defend this. I think on the scale of stupidity of things in this movie, this is like in the middle of the scale as opposed to the extreme end, which we're approaching here, because it's like Jake Gyllenhaal's like, okay, that big ship that came in, it must have medicine on it. I'm going to bundle up and go and like get her some antibiotics, some penicillin, baby. We're going to do this. And then his friend and like the romantic rival. It feels weird calling him that because frankly he isn't really a rival past a certain point. But it's the best way to describe him because there's nothing else going on with him.
I'm going to do a modern reinterpretation of this movie, in that when he was looking over and like smiling and all that over at the table where Jake Gyllenhaal and Laura were sat, he was actually flirting with Jake Gyllenhaal. He was actually looking over and being like, hey, how's it going? Because is there anything to say that he's not gay in this movie?
Well, he does come up to them at the party that night and he asked to show her around. You can't misinterpret that.
Taking her aside to say, hey, is your friend single?
I mean, yeah, he maybe he did say that. We don't know. We never see that side of it, so who knows? We just see Jake Gyllenhaal holding her drink for her as she walks off with this other boy as he looks like a puppy. He's been like, but I love her. I'm in love with her. What?
I like. Don't get me wrong. Everything else in the movie agrees with you, except for the scene where all of a sudden he's like, "No, tell her how you feel. I'm rooting for you," because that doesn't make any goddamn sense.
He's just, the movie didn't want conflict, okay? That's all. Even though conflicts would make stories, but they didn't want conflict. So we get this big expedition out to the ship, and it just so happens that we hear, we cut to like, the astronauts in the space station talking about the storm and the cloud patterns. They're like, oh, the eye of the storm is going to hit Manhattan in like a few minutes. So we've got this ticking time clock of them going to this ship, the danger of that on its own, and then the CG wolves show up. So if you want to talk about effects in this movie that have, because I think earlier on when we said they've not aged that badly, I think it's worth mentioning we were not thinking about these wolves when we said that. We were thinking about the disaster. We were thinking about the water coming in. We were thinking about the frozen buildings, all that stuff, because these wolves look like dog shit.
Yep. I mean, they look like dog shit now. I think for the time, this was probably the best that like they could do.
They look bad at the time. Maybe it's the best they could do, but that means they shouldn't have done them. That's true. They should have just not bothered, because I remember talking about them looking like shit at the time in 2004. So, so I'm sticking to that. But they go looking for the medicine. They do find it. And I thought, oh man, like there's a cool, eerie, like longer sequence here of like searching like a haunted ship, but there's no one left on board. Like they could have had such a cool, eerie, atmospheric sequence, and it just feels like they kind of wasted it a little bit. They do at least have the idea though while they're here, because they've been living off a vending machine stuff for the last several days. Hey, they've got a mess hall here. I bet they have real food, and it'll all be frozen, so it'll be pretty well preserved, you would assume. Yeah. So yeah, they find canned goods, they find food, and they get like a life raft that they use to like sort of slide it away. But of course we have to do all the shit where the wolves are chasing them and jumping into walls, and Jake Gyllenhaal's just skirting around them and whatnot.
Again, there's an idea here. The idea being, okay, mankind's hubris, they thought they could control weather and like were in charge of their environment, but then nature takes back over. And this is the first battle. This is mankind up against nature trying to reclaim its ground. How do we fare? There is an idea here that I think has legs, but again, I think at this point, we are just doing this for the sake of, it's been about 20 minutes since our last big action thing. So we just need to do something. And it feels so weird and out of place and not thought through. Like you said, it's easily forgettable that there was an entire setup to the wolves are loose. Like it just happens, and it doesn't feel like it's actually earned in any way.
Yeah, and then obviously once they're starting to like get out of the ship and whatnot and getting away from the wolves, we see the frost storm coming down the Empire State Building. We actually see like frost going down it, as if to say if that hits them, they are just dead. So we get this race against ice chasing them, basically. And to the point where when they actually get into the library, it's chasing them through the halls, and you can see it going across the walls as he's like carrying his friend who got like a leg injury along the way. And then they get into the room, and they end on a bit of a cliffhanger here. We actually don't really come back to them again until Dennis Quaid finds them, but they're just throwing books out of the fire, so keep the fire going no matter what. We have to have this fire in here, or we are just so dead. So yeah, that's obviously we'll do the other side of it in a minute because that's the separate Dennis Quaid plot. But yeah,
I'm so like that entire ending to their sequence, because that is the end of their sequence. Like we get the cliffhanger and it isn't resolved until Dennis Quaid and them intersect plots. I'm so underwhelmed by the whole thing. Like, yes, you have this outrunning the cold sequence, and it's the same over in Dennis Quaid's side of things once we get there, but it's just like, it's not a climax. It doesn't feel like this is the thing that we should have built this entire thing towards of, oh, there's going to be this thing that like flash freezes everyone immediately. That doesn't feel like the big thing to be doing in a disaster movie. It feels like, honestly, I think that the wave is the climax. I don't think they got any bigger than that over the course of the rest of the movie in terms of like scale or interest or anything like that.
Do you know what? I completely disagree with you. I get why you're saying it because it's the bigger action sequence. I think all the more interesting concepts are after the wave. I just don't think it does a good enough job with any of them. But because all of the build up to the stuff happening is just disaster movie 101, some random stuff happening around the world, bunch of nonsense science that doesn't actually work, useless like side characters that are going to disappear after their part of the world's dead. Like the first half is by far the more generic half. I think that the potential in the movie is all in the back half. I'm not saying that they hit it, but I can't agree that the climax is the wave. To me, the wave should have been earlier. To me, the wave should have been the end of that Act 1, and then the real movie is characters trying to survive in this absolutely a post-apocalyptic like ice storm.
Oh, that's the idea. That's why I'm having such a problem with it, is that I'm coming at this from the idea of it wants to be a disaster movie. It wants to do all the disaster things because that's honestly how it feels like it wants to be playing this. But once we hit the wave and once we hit the snow and they're able to walk outside and all that stuff, it quickly transitions over to a post-apocalyptic movie, and all of the interesting things that can be done there, like you're saying, the concepts, they're sprinkled throughout, but none of them are developed enough to make me think this is even a passable post-apocalyptic movie. This doesn't feel interesting in that way at all because it's so surface level the whole way through.
No, I mean, you're right, but I don't think it's trying to be post-apocalyptic. I use that to describe the type of like scenario they're in. It would still be a disaster movie. If the wave hits at the 20-minute mark and then the rest of it's them surviving in the cold, that is still a disaster movie. Like, that doesn't make it not a disaster film.
No, I understand. I guess going back, if we go all the way back to the very first disaster season we did, Poseidon Adventure, like, spoilers, the wave hits. Spoilers, like, the whole thing goes upside down.
That's the whole premise, yes. It's very good.
Right. But then the rest of the movie is them trying to deal with that. And I wouldn't say that's post-apocalyptic, obviously, but that's them, the natural fallout, the things that happen naturally out of that event, and then there's escalation on top of it. There are things that feel like we are building on, like, okay, the pressure on this is going to go, or like we're lost in these hallways, we can't get to these stairs. Whatever it ends up being, it's this natural escalation coming out of the thing that happened in the beginning. The back end of this feels like there is a very clear divide. Like, it's not so much like, okay, New York's underwater. What does that mean? Nothing. All that happens is it's cold. Like, that's the whole big event here. And it's so, because the whole big thing at the end is, okay, it was cold, but now it's really cold. It's nothing. There's nothing that grows. There's nothing that changes. It doesn't feel like an escalation. It feels like a completely separate thing that's happening.
I don't think that's the problem, though. I don't think, like, it doesn't matter that that's all it is. Like, that can be enough. Like, the movie should be about them surviving in these conditions and the problems that arise, and one of those problems might very well be is that it keeps getting even colder, and just how like dangerous it is to even like try and go outside to try and find supplies or something like that. The problem is that it still wants to be a typical disaster movie where it's cut into all these other characters, which completely deflates the potential side. You know, like, honestly, I would say get to the point where they're in the library, like at the end of Act 1, a bit earlier than it is in the movie, and then from that point on, never cut to another fucking character. Never cut to anyone else. Just follow them and have the one bit you've heard on the phone is like Dennis Quaid saying, "I'm going to get to you," and then just leave it and have it be almost like a like a Deus Ex Machina when the chips are down at the very end. He finally shows up without actually seeing any of it or something.
Yeah, there's a bit where the nerdy kid is, I assume he has some electronics. I assume he's trying to fix up a radio or something like that. Make that the only contact. Like, I agree with you. If they took that path of only keeping it in the library and having that be that works as well, because it's not trying to do this bouncing around and still trying to do disaster movie. But that's
the point I'm getting across here, though, is the problem here isn't the disaster elements. That's not the issue here at all. The issue here is developing the issues that the characters are actually trying to deal with in their situation, and also their interpersonal stuff that goes along with that. Those things are so lacking that all we really get is these key bullet points in this scenario. It doesn't need to have more disaster stuff. If anything, it could do with less disaster stuff. There's too much because it wants to do too much. So
I think that we're agreeing here, but we're coming at it with two different solutions. Like, we're coming at it where, like, I am telling it to lean more into the disaster side, and you're coming at it with, like, tone that down and go with something else.
But, I'm trying to make it a better movie, whereas I don't think what you're saying is necessarily better. It's just, you know,
no, I mean
it's more whiz and bang to keep you entertained in the back half.
No, that's the thing. Is my version of things is the first half of the movie by far and away is more interesting for me in the second half. So I'm saying maintain that, keep it going. You're saying alter what we had in the first half, change that up so that the second half has room to breathe and explore and be something new. It's different ways of approaching the same problem of just whatever you want to get out of it. But yeah, we agree on the general problem, at least.
The stuff with them in New York and in the library is far more interesting, as flawed as it is, than whenever it cuts to Dennis Quaid and his buddies making the trip, because all of that stuff just feels really undercooked.
No, that's awful.
Yeah, it's undercooked. It's, you know, it's like they do this contrived scene where the older guy, like the best friend of the dad, falls through like the roof of a mall. It's underneath the snow, and he's dangling, and he cuts off like the sled that he was like dragging behind him because that's like pulling down too much weight. But he looks up, and the younger guy is like trying to like hold him up with his weight. But the glass is starting to crack. And for some reason, the young guy took off his gloves to hold on to the sides here. And I thought, it's so cold. Like, surely you're just asking for frostbite at that point by doing that. Yeah. But, like, we get this dramatic thing where the old guy's like, no, it's not going to hold. I'm going to take one of you with me. I'm going to choose to cut the rope and die. And I'm like, this is, like, come out of nowhere so quick. And I don't really believe the situation you're in, that it feels so... It's almost the sacrificial equivalent of like the kid's got cancer in the hospital and they're waiting for like that's the heartstrings version of this. Yeah. This is the survival sacrifice version of the same kind of thing.
This is the stepping into the tornado moment. Like, this is the absolutely like this didn't need to happen. And the part that gets me the most is that you see the guy. Now, he has no way of knowing this, so from a character perspective, like, fine. But you see the guy as he's like dangling over the edge, trying to help this guy, being like, oh no, the glass is cracking underneath me. It's not going to be able to hold. Literally 12 inches to the right is a steel beam that is holding this glass in place. If he just scooted his body 12 inches to the right, everything would have been fine.
Oh, dear. But no, they do the whole thing where he cuts the rope and he falls into the abyss of the snow and the mall and the darkness and blah, blah, blah.
And then the other guy also gets knocked out pretty soon afterwards because of the frostbite or whatever.
Yeah, Dennis Quaid's dragging him along. And then this is the same time as the big cold bits hitting, right? So it's intercutting with the other stuff that we already talked about. And Dennis Quaid's solution to surviving here is he drags this guy into a Wendy's and goes into the kitchen and turns all of the cookers on to try and heat up the room, and that's how he survives.
Wendy's, yeah. And it doesn't make any sense based off of everything we just saw. Like, okay, this thing is able to chase you down through any open doors or anything like that. He just left a hole in the ceiling, but I guess the flame-broiled patties will be enough to save his life.
Yeah, that's the thing as well, is that you can see it, like, shutting a door is not going to save you here, but they keep shutting doors behind them as if it's going to help. I don't know. But whatever, it is what it is, and that's how he survived.
Question. Obviously, we were on that thing about how to change the movie or whatnot. I think, looking at the way the movie was set up and how there is nothing of interest to do with Dennis Quaid.
Yes.
Do you think it would have been better if he was the one who had the wolf attack? Like, his group had to deal with that?
I mean, I don't really want it there at all, but I mean,
Yeah.
I see what you're saying, though. It would give them something more intriguing to do. I think the problem with their journey is one, just traveling through nothing but snowy landscapes with the odd things sticking out. There's not a lot of like interesting visuals to do with that. And it's just kind of this long trek. I think what's more interesting about the New York stuff is that they've got kind of like a home base in this room that they're keeping a fire going in, but they maybe occasionally have to like sort of trek out to like find stuff or whatever. And even outside that room, like they set up that sort of main kind of study area earlier on where there's a big group of them. And then later on, when Dennis Quaid arrives and he comes through the window of that part, you see it's all just covered in snow and there's a big mountain of snow sort of like just funneled into it. And it's like, okay, I get the sense of change here because I saw this room earlier. So I that's a good visual thing. You showed me this room normal earlier on, and I remember it well enough that now it looks distinctly different and affected by everything that's happened. So that's good. But it just, there's just nothing interesting about it. Like, obviously I guess the big reason they wanted to follow Dennis Quaid's side of this more than anything is they wanted to do the main theme kicking in as they walk into New York after the storms faded, right? The storms went away now, finally, after, I guess, 7 days. Who knows?
God only. I'm going to assume it's the day after tomorrow, because what else could it be? They also have the one sequence where after the crony guy wakes up, Dennis Quaid gives the heart to heart of like, I just hope that I can have time to fix my mistakes. And like everyone, the crony, Dennis Quaid, everyone in the audience knows he's talking about his son. But then he has to clarify, I'm talking about my son. And the crony's like, yeah, we got it. Thank you.
Oh, that reminds me as well, actually. The crony's name, I remember what his name is now. It's Jason. And I'll tell you why I know that. Because every time Dennis Quaid yelled, Jason, I kept thinking of Heavy Rain. The Jason, Jason. So this predates that. But as soon as he started yelling Jason in a concerned voice, I'm like, I'm going to have Heavy Rain flashbacks now.
Dude, over on the Ace, the most recent homework that we did recording wise that I did was Minority Report, and he loses his kid Sean at one point, and it's Sean, and I'm like, hey, that sounds familiar.
So but they do this big sequence where he's walking in and they get a shot from the top of the Statue of Liberty looking down at him, and it's all frozen, but the weather's calmed down now, so he's going in and it's kind of a nice day, all things considered, even though everything's covered in the snow. And
well, that's the thing. They cut up to the space station. Some time passes, and I'm just like, "Hey, we're getting reports that everything's breaking up and that the storm is over. Can you confirm?" And they look down, and they're like, "Yeah, we can see land." I love they say we're getting reports over North America. Can you confirm? And then they're like, "Yeah, we can confirm." I mean, we're looking at Europe, but we assume it's good everywhere else.
Yeah, we can see Italy for the first time in days, so that's nice. So we get them walking through. They get to the location on the GPS, and it's like, oh, the library should be right here. And I'm like, well, it's under the snow then, right? It's just not that hard to figure out, guys.
No, it's been flattened. This is all flat now. Tornadoes hit the realm.
So they go over the hill, and he climbs in, and they do a whole tense sequence of them getting towards the door, but they see a little glow from under the door to indicate there's something behind there. They open it up, and everyone's sleeping next to the fireplace, and they wake up, and Laura's like, who's that? And Jake Gyllenhaal's like, that's my dad.
It's my dad. My dad showed up.
So basically, like, they get reports of this, that the survivors in New York, to like the vice president, who's now the president, because the president died, by the way, halfway through the movie.
Literally, and like nothing is seen, where it's just like, Mr. President, we're going to have to leave now. Smash cut. The president's motorcade totally got like destroyed and caught the storm. You're the president now. Yeah.
So, and they're all in Mexico now, right? They've went, and this is like the thing of this movie that feels probably the weirdest to watch in 2026 is this speech the vice president gives, because he talks about how, the countries that we once referred to as the third world have taken us in, and we thank them for their hospitality. And I'm like, not a single country on the planet right now wants to take in America. Are you kidding me?
I laughed at that line so hard, because as soon as he said it, as soon as he's like, we give our graciousness and we thank them so much for taking us in our time of need. And I just wanted to pin on, the invasion will begin tomorrow. We take this land for our great country.
Oh my God. I was because they mentioned Greenland at one point in the movie for various reasons, and I was just expecting them to cut to Venezuela and say that Venezuelans have taken in American refugees. I dare you right now. I dare you.
Well, that's the other bit. Like this movie, it feels like it has a policy. It feels like it's left leaning. It's got its own thing, and it's obviously all the global warming stuff, but they also specifically put in a little snide remark of when everyone is evacuating, they're like, we have Americans illegally crossing the border over into Mexico, and like they wink at the camera and say, yeah.
It's so patronizing to everyone else on the planet. It really is quite sad. But then he obviously gets into the PSA of like, we thought we could consume our planet's natural resources without consequence. We were wrong. I was wrong. And it's like, if only people today still maybe caught on to that. It's frustrating today because there actually is like enough alternatives now for the most part to switch. And
no, absolutely. It's 100% just lobbyists from like the old energy. Like that's the only thing that's keeping it going. Like nowadays.
It's that scene from Naked Gun 2 when it's like the oil, the nuclear, and all that. They're all sitting in the room and they're like, "Oh, we have to get all this solar power. We have to combat it every way we can."
It was parody then. It's real now. But I honestly, I think that's kind of the bit that annoyed me the most in this movie. Is that little ending speech thing for two reasons. The first of which is that it feels like an Aaron Sorkin West Wing sort of like just liberal idealized version where it's like you want to have this fantasy where the other side admits they were wrong, where they're like humiliated, but like you didn't do anything to stop the issue. You didn't do anything to take action. You just want the other side to admit they were wrong. And it's a little annoying when you come to see those things of like, you just want to be snarky about it. The second thing is that during his speech to the world, broadcasted on the Weather Channel, mind you, he is specifically going through and saying, and I've just gotten word that there is a small group of survivors out in New York. I am sending a party to save them immediately. We find out through the rest of the scenes that there are actually a bunch of people in New York and they're all like hanging out on rooftops.
Just to describe the scene here. So the helicopters come in, they're looking around. Like it's Dennis Quaid's boss who's on the helicopter, but we've not even mentioned him, but he's been around, right? And he's looking down, and if they finally find our main group, right, walking out of the city, they're walking. It's safe to walk now. It's still cold, but it's not like deadly cold. And it's like, hey, we're here. And as they're flying over the city away, they look down. Everyone looks down at the rooftops, and they see like little groups of survivors all coming out of all the buildings, and they look at each other, and Dennis Quaid gives this big cheesy grin as this speech is going on. And I'm like, I get that it's nice to have a little bit of positivity that some people have survived. That's good. How many billions just died? And we're doing like the saccharinely sweet, like happy ending. Like, this is not a happy ending. Billions of people are dead.
That's what I'm saying. When we get to this end bit, like, we as the audience are not aware of these other people on the buildings. So when he says there was a small group of survivors in New York, we've gotten confirmation of that, which, by the way, in the course of the movie, he only knows that Dennis Quaid and family survived because they say that they got short band radio from them. So he specifically says we've sent out these things to get them. It just feels like the same sort of shit of like, oh yes, all of these people may have died during this protest, but here's one white woman who survived. Like, it's just this thing where it's like, yeah, no, like the one guy who's like a little bit more important survived, so everyone be happy about that. Don't think about this part over here.
I mean, to play a little devil's advocate, he does say, and we're sending a search party to find them and look for any more survivors. The idea being that if there's one group that survived, it's possible others did too. There's a little bit of hope. And sure enough,
that's obviously the implication that like, yes, okay, fair. And I'm sure that applies to all of the cities across the country that like theoretically got hit by this ice wave. People may have been able to survive in some way. Fine. But over the course of the movie, it just feels like, and Dennis Quaid survived. Don't worry about everyone else. Dennis Quaid survived.
All I could think is him eating shrimp and The Substance. Which, I don't know if you've seen that, but
I have not.
Yeah, it's a memorable performance. I'll say that much.
Is it anything? I mean, I don't know if you even know the scene, considering that you don't like the movies. But is it anything like Denethor eating the tomatoes in Return of the King?
I don't remember anything from that movie.
All right, fair enough.
Yes. One day I'm sure we'll have to do them on this show, and I'm aware of that. Although
You pushed it back like 3 years, and we've only been doing this for 3 years.
I'll tell you right now, though, I will be watching the theatrical cuts and I have been told by people, like people have said to me that I made a mistake by watching the extended versions because, like, that's for people who already care about it. Like, you know, like
No, I have such a story on this. To give you the boiler points, I had just started dating a girl. We were going to see The Hobbit in theaters, and we were like, oh, let's rewatch The Lord of the Rings. And I accidentally grabbed the extended cuts, and that was like a 14-hour day. And I was like, okay, I don't really want to see you anymore for a while. Like, let's just hang out some other time.
I mean, maybe doing it in one day was a bit ambitious as well.
It was. But like we were going to see the movie like in 2 days afterwards. It was like we could fit in 3 normal sized movies in one day. Not those though.
Yeah, those extended ones are 4 hours each, so that's like mammoth. Yeah.
Yes,
anyway,
exactly.
woolly mammoths, which existed before the last ice age. Anyway.
There you go. Tied it in.
So yeah, the movie ends, and bizarrely, I remembered this just before it happened, is that it actually ends by going up to the space station, and the astronauts say, look at how clear the sky is. We've never seen it that clear before. And then it just ends with a shot of the Earth fading into black. And I'm like,
yep.
Okay, see how like it's almost it's like the Earth has reboot its climate, you know, like a computer turning off and on again. Like it's so clear. We've never seen it this clear because it's always been polluted ever since we came out of space.
Yeah. I will say I'm looking at the thing that they have, and it does show this massive ice wall that has moved its way down to, I would say, like the northern like area of Florida. Anything south of that still looks good. The UK definitely covered. Most of Europe looks fine. I feel like this was targeted to North America. I have to assume that they just wanted to get rid of the US.
Okay. All right. Well, hopefully one of my European brethren would have taken me in, but
yes.
We'll find out, I suppose, if this ever happens.
If this ever happens. If everything about global warming we know just flips on its head, it's like, no, actually.
I mean, maybe this is the weirdest thing I could possibly say as a positive. At least this makes actual climate change not look as bad.
Yeah, but it's weird because it also does that transitionary thing where if this is a message, if this is like a warning to people saying, hey, you should care about global warming, climate change because like it can do horrible things like this, and then they're like, oh, okay, let me find out more, and they find out that's like, yeah, no, in 20 years sea levels may rise by 3 inches. They're like, that's not what Dennis Quaid was talking about. That doesn't sound bad at all. So they might almost brush it off.
That's true, yeah. But I mean, that is really bad, but it doesn't sound as bad because it's not as spectacular as what's in this movie.
You have all this spectacle here that's like, no, we have to stop this from happening. When you tell them the truth, they're like, eh.
I just want to give a shout out to Canada because I feel like Canada gets glossed over. They say the storm came obviously over Canada first before it got to the US, but there's not a single shot of like any Canadian cities getting destroyed. I'm like, no. It's like they just don't care about Canada. I'm like, come on, Canada is.
Pete, we opened this movie in Antarctica, and still the first shot is the American flag. Like, yeah.
But Roland Emmerich's not even American.
I know. And that's the other bit about it. Like, fine, if you want to have this visual, have this visual. But like, the Statue of Liberty got hit by a tidal wave. I don't know if they think that it was carved into the earth itself. Like we just chipped away things to make the Statue of Liberty, but it's a statue sitting on top of a rock. It would absolutely just fall over and there would be nothing left. I don't know why they think that it's always going to be standing as well as it is.
Yeah, to be fair, it wasn't a tidal wave, it's just a big wave, but I get it.
Yes, it was hit by a monumental amount of water.
I was thinking, is it going to fall over? And then I remembered, no, because so much of the visuals later on are going to be it standing frozen, so they can't fall over. Yeah.
Well, it's literally just there because they want to have that final shot before the space station of the arm still standing there, the torch popping out of the water as if to say, our liberty will still stand tall.
All right, David, what are you rating The Day After Tomorrow out of 10?
So, like I said, I came into this, I remembered it being dumb fun. I remembered it being very, like, schlocky, doesn't need to make a lot of sense, but it was still a fun time. On this view through, it was less fun. I don't think that's any fault of, like, all of a sudden there's like bad connotations or like it's handling things poorly or anything like that. I think it's still the same quality across the board that it was. It's just growing up. It's just like being able to view things through this different lens and like having a critical eye to it. So I'm probably going to rate it a little bit lower than I would have going into it. But I do want to say, like, it is still an okay watch. I'm not coming out of this angry I saw it. It's funny in moments, it's dumb in other moments. I think that it's something that I probably wouldn't recommend, but if it were just on TV in the background and I just wanted some noise, yeah, this is the exact perfect thing for that, because it's just every once in a while I can look over and see a bunch of wolves theoretically going after people. So I think for this one, I'm going to say 7. I think I view this in very much. Yeah, I know.
7?
I view this very. It's. I don't know. I'm
Look,
stuck between this and the core. That's my honest problem.
Like, you don't have to adhere to how I view the numbers by any stretch, right? You can have your own reasoning for your scale. That's fine.
Yeah.
But to me, a 7 is you saying good. Right, 7 is good, 8 is great, 9's amazing, 10 is one of my favorites of all time. Like, that's the scale of that end of the spectrum. So I was not expecting a 7 based on everything you said.
You know what? You're right. I'm looking at my numbers, and I'm always trying to do things relatively of like, how do I feel compared to other things? And looking back, I'm looking at the core, and the core I gave a 7 too. But the core had a lot more like nostalgia for me. It was a lot more of a guilty pleasure. So I think I think I'm going to drop down to a 6.5 because it isn't good. I admit it isn't good. And this one at least lacks the nostalgia factor and the guilty pleasure factor. So yeah, probably 6.5. But I do still think a 6, whatever you're about to say, you don't have to hear my numbers. A 6 does seem a bit too low for me. I think that it is still enjoyable enough to be up at that 6.5.
I felt like you were very critical through that review, so I'm still kind of surprised at even the 6.5, to be honest. And
yeah.
It's rare that I feel Shyamalan at score at the end of the review, but I feel Shyamalan with you blurting out 7. Because
I really like that first half. I do.
I'm debating with like between a 5 and a 5.5. I think it's watchable, so I don't think it goes below the 5. I think it's perfectly serviceable schlock to put on. So it gets to that halfway mark. Maybe 5.5 because it's just at least there's a little bit of nostalgia or a little bit of like, hey, there's kind of some silly stuff you can kind of laugh at or whatever. But I wouldn't put it as high as decent, never mind good, just for a bunch of reasons. I think there's so many like side characters that could be trimmed out. It could, like, for some reason there was this obsession with disaster movies at the time of it feels more real if we cut up between 50 characters who are all parts of different agencies and like we make it feel like it's spread over all these different people.
If you're in a major city and you don't have at least one homeless guy on your team, you're doing it wrong.
Yeah, so I just think that there's an excess of characters. I think there's stuff they could have focused on and really fleshed out to make it more unique or a better movie. I think it's the abundance that kind of weighs it down, and I wouldn't praise it all that. I think it's the sort of thing where some of the 70s movies, not all of them to be fair, some of them, because we did see some truly terrible ones from there as well, but I think in general the 70s ones almost like as a knock-on effect of not being able to do as many big things, like having those limitations almost forced them to develop the character stuff a bit more. So as a result, some of these ones from this time period I think suffer more from just like, oh, we're not going to spend as much time on that. So I am going to give it a 5.5. I think that's where I feel happy saying for this one.
No, I absolutely agree with the idea of it's the Jurassic Park line we always come back to of you spend so much time thinking about whether or not you didn't stop to think about whether or not you should. When it comes down to the special effects, like, yeah, that's what it is. You're able to do anything, and therefore the story's kind of whatever. It's all about the spectacle.
Yeah. But it doesn't have to negate the other. Like, you could have the special effects that it has and then still write a compelling story with characters to make it work.
You can, but why would the studio care? They're going to get the same amount of box office regardless.
But the studio doesn't care about it in any movie. They just want money in the end anyway. It's up to the people making it, the director, the people, the creatives in charge that need to care about it. And Roland Emmerich is a schlocky blockbuster director. That's who he is.
Yes. But the key word there is blockbuster. He bust the block.
Well, for a time, it kind of dwindled as the years went on.
Yes. All right. So 6.5 and a 5.5. We are bouncing around the in-between of different levels of does it make the cut?
So here's the thing. I think this movie is a prime example of either cutting it close or not making the cut. You have shocked me with your weird positive rating, despite the fact that I don't think, if anything, you should be more negative than me for large stretches of that review. So it feels weird that your number almost like necessitates you're going to argue to go higher, but I feel like, I feel like I just don't get that from everything I've said.
No, I look, it's hard. It's the same sort of thing of when we describe comedies. Like, we could sit here and tell you the jokes and tell you they're funny, but like, it's hard to get across what is actually funny about them in the moment. It's the same sort of thing here where it's schlocky, it's dumb, I know it is. But like, I am still getting some level of enjoyment out of how schlocky and dumb it is. I will critique it to like the cows come home because it is dumb. But like, when it comes push comes to shove, like, I still am sitting there laughing at them running away from a cold frost wave, you know?
All right. What did we put the core? Let's have a baseline.
We put the core cutting it close.
Right. And I think this is definitely weaker than the core. You agree with that, I assume?
I would agree with that. Yes.
Right. So it's not getting higher than cutting it close then, right? So we're putting our foot down there.
Yes. No, I would not say this makes the cut by any stretch of the imagination. Okay. The one that was cut from the collection this season was Meteor, the 1979 one.
Armageddon was cut, surely.
It was the next category down. It was cut.
Okay, yeah, but the implication there was that it was the only one that didn't at least get cut in the close.
No, that one was a cut above. That one we're putting on a pedestal. It's a Criterion movie, Pete. It needs love.
Criterion's like wank stain of shame is the two Michael Bay movies that they first like. Well, I know the reason that it was money, but like the two Michael Bay movies they put out, it's like they stick out like a sore thumb.
So I mean, yes, I would make the argument for cutting it close, but that is solely out of like, it does kind of approach B-movie levels of just schlocky, dumb fun while still being an actual blockbuster with like all this money in it.
I think I would argue that it just doesn't make the cut because I think it's lacking the personality to get it into there based on the schlocky qualities. Like, because I think that the core at least has a little bit of like some weird senses of humor or like, you know, character, like, and I'm not saying there's never a joke in this movie, but it's so few and far between, and I feel like it's lacking, because in almost every way I think this is better than Armageddon, but the one thing I'll say about Armageddon over this is that Armageddon at least does feel like it has a personality. There's a personality that I don't like, but there is a personality there. This feels almost kind of sterile by comparison.
Armageddon has the personality of a guy who cuts you off in traffic. Like, at least he's doing something. No, you know what? I'll agree with you. You give me mine quite a few times. I'll go ahead and agree with you here. I think you make the argument well. Cut from the collection makes sense.
There we go. Cut from the collection, indeed. All right, what's coming next time then on the collector's cut? Let's find out, ladies and gentlemen. Disaster season rages on for a couple more weeks. Next week, we actually go to a movie from the same decade where we're sort of going through time here. We started off in the late 90s, we're into the 2000s, and we're going a couple of years later now to a remake of a movie we've already done. When we did 70s Disaster Season, we did the Poseidon Adventure. Next week, we look at Poseidon, and we'll see how that shapes up. How does that movie turn out when they've got modern effects at their disposal? Well, relatively, modern for the time anyway. Yeah, 30 years later, okay? 30 years later effects.
What happens when they don't actually have to build a miniature of a boat and they can just plug it into a computer and do whatever they want?
So I've never seen it, actually. This is like... this and Meteor were the only two of this season that I hadn't seen before. So I'm genuinely curious to see how this pans out.
The only thing I know, to just provide a little bit of continuity here, in Day After Tomorrow... originally the role of Laura was supposed to be played by Lindsay Lohan. She had to drop out and she was replaced with Emily Rossum. And the exact same thing happened in Poseidon.
It was maybe Lindsay Lohan, she got replaced by someone else?
With Emily Rossum.
Emily Rossum's in it again?
Yep.
I did not know that. All right, that's just very surprising. What's so weird about that is that they're so wildly different. Like Emmy Rossum does come across as like very kind of like, I don't know, like she's the girl next door. She's like the perfect for the teen crush thing that they've got going on Day After Tomorrow. Lindsay Lohan is a bit more like the girl with attitude who, like, I'm trying to say it in a nice way, but you know what I mean. She's not the innocent girl, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I mean, if you watch Shameless, you get it the other side of that. You would get the Lindsay Lohan side from Emily Rossum. But I mean, this was also during the period before Lindsay Lohan went down that path as far as she did.
Sure. So it's just funny that they've been up for the same roles multiple times, because I feel like I get a very different vibes. Like the character, it's kind of like when you hear that Pamela Anderson was almost in X-Files instead of Gillian Anderson, and how different that would be if that's what they did. But anyway, there you go. That's what's coming next week. Poseidon. We'll see you for that. And we get one more after that, which was voted for, and then we're on to a new season, which I'll just tell you now is going to be a 10-film season where we look at some of the more acclaimed or respected films of 2025. This might be a new tradition here, where early in the year we'll do a season of the previous year's movies that are worth checking out. So I'm actually quite excited about that, and because it's all newish films, I have not seen any of them, and that's kind of fun, and neither of you, obviously, so...
I recognize exactly one movie from this list, so I will learn some things that season.
That should be fun, but and it'll be more prestigious compared to schlocky disaster season. So they like to balance things out a little bit with the smart and the dumb. But that is Collector's Cut. Thank you for joining us. You can, of course, support the show over at Patreon, patreon.com/MailFuzzTV. Get access to the bonus ratings rundown segment, which... sometimes I feel like we end up like talking about some stuff we forgot to talk about in the main review on that. Like I think we did that today with this. So you can get that on Patreon, or you can also get the monthly show that we do on Patreon called Extra Reels, where we review some of the worst movies ever made. For example, we did have a little ditty called Tiptoes this past month, which is Gary Oldman playing a little person.
If everything releases as we plan it to, it should actually be out the same day as this review.
Oh, really? That's this week. Okay, fair enough. Yep, fair enough. So yeah, there's that, and there's like 35 episodes of that now. So there's a whole back catalogue to check out. But yeah, you can get all that and help support everything and keep the show coming. And also check out the other shows we do, of course, like the Atomic Cinema Experiment, our sci-fi podcast, and Screams After Midnight, the horror movie podcast that I do with Tim. But otherwise, that is the show. So thank you very much for joining. We do appreciate it. Keep watching movies, and if you can get it, it's always nice to have diplomatic immunity.